The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Big day, tech transformation in America is coming alive. Listen, you own your medical records, you paid for them one way or another, and we're making sure that you can give those medical records to whoever you want, and by doing that, we can, for the first time, make it easier for AI systems, if you want them, to help you make the best decisions for your health. And I look forward to Americans all over the country going for the first time with a QR code on their phone from devices and companies you guys are building to allow them to have a patient-driven future in healthcare that's using apps, digital IDs, and modern data sharing technologies to make it easier to be healthy in America, because that is the core of what Baha really is about, making it easier to be healthy.
Unleashing technology on our healthcare system is one of the best ways that we have reducing costs and making America healthy again. AI is the key driver. It can translate complex biology into clear, actionable guidance. It can help people make better food choices and better healthcare choices.
You know, as a doctor, I remember patients trying to get their medical record, getting relegated to some corner basement of the hospital. Those records belong to the American patient. They belong to you.
We announced recently new draft guidance that makes it clear when the FDA needs to approve medical software, including AI software, and when we need to just get out of the way and you can go.
And most importantly, we have patients who can now access and share their data using their identity without logging into multiple patient portals and without acting as their own human fax machine. Starting today, patients can get apps that they choose and can share their records with anyone they want, and they can use conversational AI to get personalized advice anytime, day or night, right from their phone. It's an amazing day. I'm so excited.
Woo!
So, who owns your health records? Well, if you listened there to Dr. Oz, you own them. If you listen to Dr. Makari, they belong to you. But what is the exact truth? We're going to get into that today, speaking with Aimee from Firsthand Media, who has covered this well. After that, Pam Long is coming on to discuss why does the Air Force have the flu shot mandate back after it was revoked just 2 months ago. We're going to get into that. Then Stephanie Lucretia has Chris and Amanda Albertelli on to discuss a small cell tower just feet away from their home. So stick around. You don't want to miss this entire hour. Before we go into who owns your health records and to that important conversation, yesterday in New York City in the Second Circuit Court of Appeal, FDNY firefighter, now retired, O'Brien Pastrana was in court with his attorneys Sujata Gibson and Christina Martinez. Dozens of supporters came out with him. This is a Children's Health Defense backed case. O'Brien was injured not once but twice by 2 COVID shots. The second shot he was forced to take. There's a clip of the judge arguing why he was uncomfortable with this case. Remember, O'Brien already lost in the lower court, forcing our attorneys to appeal this, to say, no, you can't place humans on sacrifice slabs for public health for their jobs. Check this out. New York Freedom Rally put out this clip. Let's show this clip.
I can't get over the fact that the very next day, just a couple of days after being told he couldn't have an allergy test, he went and had the thing done. You know, there was on his side almost nothing. He didn't wait, he didn't ask. I mean, it's very dramatic that he went and got the second dose, knowing what the first dose had done. And in that circumstance, that keeps bothering me.
Well, what, Your Honor, is more disturbing? That a firefighter trained to follow orders is told he can't get an exemption without this test, and then he gets the test? Or is it more disturbing that the city knew he had severe anaphylaxis and was at risk of severe harm with a contraindication that is a textbook contraindication, and they told him, they never said, oh, go see if you can get the test and then come back to us. They never said, you can apply through these channels and we'll see if we could give you an exception from that policy. They said there's only one way to get it, and that is to get this test. And if you don't get that test, you need to follow orders, otherwise you are in dereliction of your duty. He did what was asked of him.
And so when they said follow orders, that meant get the second shot. And the judge was arguing, I don't understand how he possibly could have done it. And there you have Sujata Gibson fired up in her response there. Let's bring Aimee from Firsthand Media on to discuss this. Aimee, thank you so much. We are going to be discussing who owns your medical records, but you were there yesterday in the court with O'Brien Pastrana and other freedom fighters that were there. Just give us a little bit of an overview of what happened, what your impression was when you were in the court.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. It was a tough day, I think. I think it was a tough day for O'Brien. So this was before a panel of 3 judges, and there was a lot of back and forth about the administrative processes that had to do with, getting an exemption and whether that was available, whether there was any process in place at the point when he had already had some adverse reaction to the first shot. And so there was just this lengthy discussion with very, rapid fire questions from the judges about this whole administrative process. And, actually near the end of the hearing, the end of the oral arguments, O'Brien got up and left the courtroom, and he kind of stood up and said, in frustration, it was anaphylaxis because they kept going back and forth about all of these bureaucratic things, and I think he was really feeling like it was a medical problem, and he got up and left before the very end, and was really obviously frustrated. And I was able to sit down and talk with him afterward, with him and Sujata Gibson, and I'm going to publish that conversation a little later today on my Substack, so you can hear more from them about that. And I was really glad to see that they were on with you to talk before the hearing. So for people who want a little follow up to that, they can hear the conversation that I had with them as well. But I think it was a tough day for him, and it's hard to tell with these with hearings like this, because the judges just have so many questions, and you can't really know in the moment where that will lead them in terms of a decision.
Oh, that's for sure. I've walked out of courtrooms positive judges were going to rule a certain way, and they ruled 180 degrees the other way. But everybody subscribe to firsthandmedia.substack.com. Aimee is one of the original grassroots reporters in New York City, reporting what was really happening during COVID. She has some amazing footage of people, in their own words, what happened to them, how COVID vaccine mandates destroyed them. So I'm excited to hear later today. We're going to have O'Brien and Sujata Gibson, my attorney, Sujata Gibson. She's representing me as well, too, in my court cases. So you definitely don't want to miss that, and make sure to check that out. I will be checking that out. Okay, so thank you for that update. That was actually really quick, but really powerful, Aimee. So thank you for it. But let's talk about who owns our medical records. We see out of HHS, we see Dr. Oz, we see Secretary Kennedy, we see the former commissioner of the FDA, Marty Makary, all talking about, well, Dr. Oz said you own your records. Marty Makary said your records belong to you. After reading your piece on Substack, I think these exact words are really important. Aimee, who owns our medical records?
So the short answer is not you. We don't own our own medical records unless we're providing our own medical care and generating our own clinical notes. Generally people go and see a medical professional, and that person creates the clinical notes and collects all the information that goes into your medical records and gets coded, and you don't own that in a legal sense. There's no legal ownership there. what you have is a legal right to access. And that's through HIPAA and some other federal rules that govern access to medical records and privacy of medical records. But you don't own them, and I think that's an important point, because telling people that they own their medical records, that your medical records belong to you, gives you, I think, a false sense of control. You don't have total control over what happens with your medical records. What you have is are the rights that HIPAA and other federal rules and state laws give you to access your medical records and to have some control over how they're shared. And there are a lot of good things in there. There's no there's no situation where someone can come in and kind of like reach into your medical records and see everything, right? But there is, for example, public health access to your medical records that you really don't have control over. Public health authorities, they have to do it in a specific way. They have to specify what information they want and what they're going to use it for. But public health officials can go into your medical record and access that information if they do it in the specified way, without your input. Right? You don't have, it doesn't matter whether you've consented to that or not. So that's, I think, an important, if you owned your medical records, you'd be able to say, oh, no, you can't do that. Give me back my medical records. You can't look at them anymore. But that's not the situation that we're in.
So in terms of public health authorities being able to reach into selective parts of your medical records, what comes immediately to mind and to the mind of a lot of my viewers is vaccination status, right? That's going to be one of the big things. My next guest coming on after this, Pam Lung, is going to talk about an alleged flu outbreak that's happening at a military base in Texas. They're now implementing a mandate that was taken away over there. That sounds like a perfect situation. Being the military has another layer of, administrative rules to it. But just given in the normal world, that seems like a situation where it'd be very easy for public health authorities to say, well, we need to know who got the flu shot. We need to know who didn't. We need to access that for everybody in this county, everybody in the city, everybody in this state. Does that sound accurate? What's your take on that?
So the way that this works, I can describe in a little bit of detail how it works in New York, because New York is my focus. And New York also has a very well-developed state health data infrastructure that they're continuing to modernize and improve. So it's pretty advanced as far as the health data infrastructure goes. So the way that works is that there are 6 regional data infrastructure networks, and those all connect up into a state network, which is called the SHINY. It's the statewide health information network for New York. And what that does is it connects, all general hospitals in the state connect to the SHINY, and lots of other providers connect to the SHINY. If you look at my article, I have a link to, a listing of all of the providers that connect to the SHINY. But being connected to the SHINY, and hospitals are required to connect and required to make a certain set of data available. So connecting to the SHINY allows, doctors, medical professionals, social services to a certain extent to share medical records between them with your consent. For that, there's a consent system. So if you want to share medical records with a doctor who you haven't been involved with before, who hasn't been treating you before, you can sign a consent form, and then other doctors will be able to see your medical records. And that's something that you can control. You can usually consent to have your medical records viewed for emergency purposes only. But the consent there doesn't affect public health access. So public health authorities So the state health department has access to certain data sets within the medical record through the Shiny. And they have to, in order to comply with HIPAA and other rules, they have to submit a list of data elements that they want to look at. And they have to describe, what the purpose of looking at those data elements is. And then that has to be approved by a committee. So there is this whole process. And then when the health department workers go in and do their job of using that data for whatever research they're doing, there are very strict rules governing what they can access and who can access information access. It's much a free for all, but there are.
Oh, did Aimee freeze up, Lou? I think she's back. Let's see if we got her back. Aimee, you froze up for a second. Let's see if we got
okay.
Yeah, we got you
okay?
back. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
All right. So I think right now there are about half a dozen data sets that are approved for public health use, and those are usually subsets of a core data set that is used throughout the United States, which is the US CDI. So this is the United States core data for interoperability. And all EHR systems, so electronic health record systems, have to be able to collect these core data elements in order to be approved for use. There's like a government certification process. So all of the electronic health record systems that are storing our medical records have to be able to collect and store this core set of information, which includes, you were talking about vaccinations, which includes vaccination records. And so then the health department can go in and say, okay, we need to look at this set of data elements from the core data set that's being collected for this specific research purpose. And, for example, there is one in New York that the health department looks at, which is respiratory illness prevalence. And it's a respiratory illness surveillance data use. And so that I haven't I haven't just looked at it. So, but I'm pretty sure it includes vaccination status. Could that also be used for a mandate, to enforce a mandate? I think they would probably have to submit a separate data use request to do that, but I don't see anything preventing them from requesting that in the law. So that's an important question.
Well, that's interesting. We've discussed this before, Aimee, where there are bills pending to make it a law where the adult vaccine database throughout New York State is mandatory, where technically it is still has opt-in and opt-out features to it. They want to creep that further, and we've debated about that before, about is that even needed now that they're having this greater infrastructure and greater interoperability. Speaking of interoperability, the last question I really want to ask you and get your your ideas on is Dr. Oz, in the clip we played at the beginning, also spoke about artificial intelligence tools and digital identities. Talk to me a little bit about this as we're moving into this hyper digital, hyper interoperable space for medical records. What is coming in terms of especially digital IDs and the what seems to be the cure-all? Everyone talks about AI being able to kind of solve everything. What are your thoughts about that?
Digital ID verification is already in use for medical record access. That's in use in New York. You can use Clear to access you can verify your identity through Clear to access your medical records through the Shiny, through one of their regional networks. And that kind of digital identification verification that's being rolled out in other places too. So I
In
think
New York, what is it that they use? Are you aware of what is it
Clear.
that they? Well,
It's
is it based off of biometrics? Is it based off of, IDs that you upload, or what do they utilize?
so this is the same Clear that is in airports, right? So they specialize in, identification. And I think what they do is do a live photo of you, to verify your. I think you present various forms of identity and do a live photo. I haven't been through that process, but I think that's how that generally works. And so they have a record of your identity that they can match to when you try to log in and look at your records. I think the focus of the RFK Jr.'s administration at HHS has really been about putting people's own medical information in their own hands so they can have more information about themselves. And that will come along with AI tools. If you have an app that can access your own medical information and it has AI features that can, analyze that information for you, I think that that's kind of what their focus is, the kind of technology that they've been supporting. So it's very, very focused on giving people information that will help them control their own health. That's one use for AI, but I think the public health establishment, the sort of mainstream public health establishment, tends to be more interested in population health, data use to improve population health, so groups of people. And so, there are a lot of people who are more interested in using AI to do, larger population analysis and all kinds of other research analysis. So yeah, AI is already here analyzing our medical records and providing analysis to medical professionals, to patients, to researchers, and digital ID verification is already there for individual medical record access. The other system is that, there's if you're not using a digital ID system, there's a demographic matching system that's used. So one way or another, they have your, New York State has a master patient identity database, right? So that's how, you go to the doctor, if they get your record through the Shiny, they want to make sure it's your record. You don't want somebody else's medical records coming up. So that's how they do it. They have a database of identity information that they're matching you to. But this can also be done through a digital ID system like Clear, and that's happening now.
This is really, unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but this is fascinating because having a greater ability to identify people, to probe into health records and information has some good aspects to it. You might be able to find what is causing this specific epidemic. Why are there so many injuries from this age to that age? So there's a lot of great things. And at the same time, there's a lot of huge concerns about privacy right violations, constitutional violations. And here we are just at the precipice, at the beginning, really, of this happening. Aimee, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have to leave it there. Everybody subscribe to firsthandmedia.substack.com and be on the lookout for an exclusive interview she has with Sujata Gibson and O'Brien Pastrana, vaccine injured firefighter, right after they walked out of court yesterday in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Aimee, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for talking with me. Thanks for having me.
We'll have you back soon for sure. Now in Texas, the military base that allegedly has a flu outbreak in June, forcing, a flu mandate to be reinstituted by the Air Force, who requested it and got approval on that. To discuss this, I want to bring on Pam Long, who heads Children's Health Defense Military Chapter. Pam, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for talking about this today. It's an important issue.
Yeah, of course. So Children's Health Defense put out a tweet because you alerted us to this. Flu shots do not stop the spread. I think that might be the most important takeaway in all of this. This is like outlines, mirrors almost exactly what happened with the COVID shot, right? We're all forced to take this thing, but why are we being forced? It stops the spread. Oh, wait a second. No, it doesn't. 2 months ago, Pete Hegseth ended the flu shot mandate in the military, which was historic because this was a 70-year standing mandate. This has never happened before. You informed me it was done off a cost-benefit analysis that just didn't make financial sense for the military to keep it. And now we have this situation in Texas where at least one division of the military, the Air Force, now is reinstating the mandate. My first question, is it just this base that has the mandate or the entire Air Force now has the mandate?
Well, that's a good question because any base can file for a waiver or an exception to policy for the influenza vaccine to make it mandatory again. And this is just the first of maybe possibly many other installations asking for an exception to policy. And like you alluded to, the influenza vaccine notoriously has negative efficacy. That means that you will have an increased risk of respiratory virus if you take the influenza vaccine. So last year, the Department of War made it voluntary for our reserve units. And the media spun that as we're giving our service members more choice in their vaccine decisions in the COVID aftermath. And really, it just pertained to the reserve units. So then in April of this year, we saw the flu shot mandate reversed for all active duty service members, which was a huge victory for medical freedom. So during this time frame between the reserve mandate going away and the active duty mandate going away, we see back in January of 2026, just the beginning of this year, that Military Medicine published a surveillance report. And this report is so flawed. And this is what is the basis for this narrative you're seeing in the media right now. This report stated that recruits have 7 times more influenza than the general military population. That is hard to believe. These young 25-year-olds are more at risk for influenza. It also said they had more risk than people, the elderly population in the civilian population, which is also hard to believe. It just is not plausible. And then there's another factor in this report that says that the recruits with this alleged 7 times more risk for influenza, for hospitalization, this is not replicated out in the general population of the military with other 25-year-olds, only new recruits. So if you've spent 1 day in public health in the military like I have, you know that recruits abuse what we call the sick call and quarter system. When there's a tough day of training, our new recruits will go to sick call. They will say they are sick. They will get put on quarters. And I would need to know if this data of 160, 200 new recruits getting influenza, is that legitimate? Are we counting sick call and quarters as hospitalization for influenza? How are we testing them for influenza? Is it a PCR test? This really demands a lot of scrutiny because my source at Health and Human Services has told me, a very trusted source with the CHD community, senior leader, says that 70% of these new recruits are vaccinated for the influenza vaccine, and this has nothing to do with their vaccine status. So if this vaccine has negative efficacy and we just vaccinated all these new recruits for the influenza vaccine with the influenza vaccine in June, which I would offer as malpractice. We're using a vaccine potentially from last season. Influenza season is October through March for strains dedicated to that winter season. New recruits do not have a risk for influenza in June in Texas because of UV, higher temperatures. They're getting outdoors. They have high vitamin D. They are not an at-risk population. There are a lot of variables here that need to be scrutinized. And if I were advising the Department of War, these are all the variables I would be looking at before we start reversing a mandate of a vaccine that has negative efficacy.
Yeah, I'm really, really well said, Pam. So it appears thus far it is just this base that has the alleged outbreak that has gotten this exception. They can now mandate it at that Air Force base. I have that correct?
As far as I know. Now, other installations that have new recruits of any branch, they could also use this spin to say we're at risk as well, and we need to file for an exemption or an exception to policy to have the flu shot mandate reinstated. We really need to investigate this and get good information to both Health and Human Services leadership and the Department of War before we start reversing policy.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Texas in June. I mean, a hotbed of flu, right? I mean, it like hardly makes sense, but the media is all over it. They're throwing it out there. They're trying to work an agenda. And to me, it feels like multiple different, from the media to big pharma to the DOW bureaucracy to all of these different elements that are now working to attack Hegseth's really calm-headed policy change that he made 2 months ago. I can't prove that right now, but trying to get hysterical about flu in the summer amongst 25-year-olds. I mean, like when it sometimes it just baffles me. It feels like we've gone into this bizarro world where we can't even handle a splinter. We can't handle anything anymore, and it just seems so far away from the roots of the American experiment and the Constitution and everything that we are. I don't know what your comments might be to any of that.
Really bring up a good point from a security and defense position. Our enemies, they are not hindered by influenza and respiratory viruses. They are still our enemies and our foes with influenza, with respiratory viruses. They do not send their troops home, when they have a cold or flu. And we need to really think how this makes us look as Americans and our forces. It makes us look weak when we say we're afraid of respiratory viruses. That's what it makes us look to the world and to our enemies.
That's a really strong point. We shutting down the military over some sniffles. Yeah, it really is really horrible messaging. Pam, unfortunately, we're out of time here, but June 30th comes to mind, a week from today. Duty to Disobey is going to be shown in, I believe, 113 theaters across the nation. I'm going to be speaking with John Gilmore and Rita Palma in Long Island, happening on June 30th in Westbury. Everybody get your tickets there. You can easily get the Long Island tickets at teachersforchoice.substack.com, and everybody else can get their tickets at dutytodisobeyfilm.com. Pam, where are you going to be? I know you're somewhere June 30th watching this film.
I am with the STARS leadership, some retired generals who are supporting us in Colorado Springs, and I want to give a shout out to them because they have been big advocates for us within the Department of War.
Fantastic. Pam Long, thank you so much for joining me today. We'll have you back as this story develops and hopefully develops towards sanity, but we shall see.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere now. It's my privilege to hand the show over to my colleague, Stephanie Lucrecio, as they discuss a small cell tower that was installed feet from residents' home. And what has that done and what can be done to stop it? Let's go to Stephanie.
Good morning, CHD. Stephanie Lucrecio here with your EMR and wireless update. Today, we're speaking with a family from Hollywood, Florida, who says that they were displaced from their home that they've owned for 24 years after telecommunications equipment associated with Crown Castle and T-Mobile were installed less than 32 feet from their bedroom. The family was not properly notified, their objections were ignored, and local officials allowed the project to move forward despite their concerns. Joining us today are Chris and Amanda Albertelli to share their story, discuss the impact on their family, and explain why they continue the fight for the removal of this equipment. Welcome to the show, Chris and Amanda. So happy to have you.
Hey, hi. Thank you for having us on.
Thank you for being on and sharing this important story. It's something that we're hearing far too often. People not being notified and waking up with cell tower equipment feet from their home, their children's school, a very scary reality to live into. So tell me, how did the city of Hollywood, Florida allow telecom equipment to be installed less than 32 feet from your bedroom without notifying your family?
Amanda was at work that morning when they started the installation, and I just went outside because it was noisy. And there's a giant flatbed truck holding the concrete pole, and workers with tents set up on the side of the home, and several large trucks using a vacuum to make the hole in the ground. And when I asked what was going on, the job foreman flashed a permit at me on a clipboard and didn't give me my own copy or anything. Handed me a business card and told me if I wanted to make an inquiry, I would have to contact the people on the business card. And so we really just had no idea of what it was, and it took a lot of our own effort to uncover it while it was still in progress. So on that day, it was just a pole. And we fought fiercely for about 3 weeks trying to uncover the information, contact local authorities, and to make our objections well known to the city staff. When it kind of turned out that they had no clue what they allowed to permit. The indications we get from email messaging from them is like, what is this thing? And they're discussing it with Crown Castle in an email. And so Crown Castle is now explaining to them what Crown Castle was permitted by those staff members to do. It's very upsetting.
I'm upset for you just sitting here listening. Were you aware at the time of all of the implications of having such equipment outside of your home? Or was this just like a natural instinct, seeing this pole go up, that you knew something just instinctually was very wrong here?
I definitely thought there was something wrong because there was no notification about why it was being placed there. We've already had some issues with the city and what I consider them causing blight on our property, which would reduce our values over long term. They installed some other fiber equipment nearby in a J box, and a neighbor backed into it. It's been like that, tilted on an angle for years and years. And every single time we see a service person at the site, we ask them to have it fixed, and they just laugh at us. So that's one other thing, and multiple other installations nearby that are just ruining the neighborhood. So when they didn't notify us about this and they just started doing it, that caused alarm and made us really, me and my wife together, focus our energy in figuring out every aspect.
Amanda, what was your reaction when you saw this equipment going up outside of your window?
Fear. I've obviously a lot more educated about it now, but I had heard things about 5G and the health effects. Once we did find out what it was after I submitted a public records request, and we found out what the poll was intended for, I started doing more research, and I was just in fear for myself, mainly my children, because they're young, and you hear that it affects them more. They're developing brains, thinner skulls. That picture's sad, sorry. So yes, so it was an initial fear. And like Chris mentioned, we were, we didn't let up. We tried to stop it before it was installed, when it was just a pole, because we knew it would be easier and less expensive. We were ignored. And then we watched the wires go into the ground. And then the day the node came. Then we didn't know when they were going to activate it. No one would tell us anything. They kept playing games with us, pretending that they were going to help us. So we were kind of stuck in a situation where we couldn't make any decisions about what we were going to do next, because there was this hope that they were going to relocate the pole. It was one thing after another, making us believe that that was actually going to happen. And then jumping ahead, I started to feel the effects from it. And my husband thought that I was wrong. He suggested that he may be able to see the FPNL power, the meter box pulling power from it, and that would tell us that it was actually activated. And we weren't seeing that, but I could feel something different happening in my body. And then we did get confirmation that it was activated. So those things that I was feeling were real.
Of course. Can we go back to those pictures and can you explain what we're looking at? Both, I'm assuming that's your daughter, and then the other picture was you. What is that?
So once, we started to, I initially felt the effects of it. And then, you're not allowed to talk about those things because everyone says that, that it's not real. But I definitely was. So I scheduled a doctor's appointment immediately. I had actually just been cleared with a good bill of health from my PCP just prior to that. But because I started having all these symptoms, including pain in the base of my skull, I had headaches. I was nauseous all the time. My right ear started to ring first. My hands were trembling. I couldn't sleep at night. I knew I needed to tell my PCP about this. So I did go. The pictures that you're seeing were ultimately me having to have an EEG done. The PCP explained that we had to do this as a diagnosis of exclusion, that in order to prove that the pole was causing these things, that we would have to eliminate everything else, that there was nothing wrong with me. And we did that. We did that with lots of diagnostic testing and blood work. And there's no health issues with me. So, the pole came, the symptoms started, it was cause and effect. It definitely was the emissions from this 5G pole that were causing these things to happen to me. And ultimately, it started with my children too. Not as bad, but they did start having headaches and they were nauseous. I immediately took them to their pediatrician, and she suggested doing the same thing, process of elimination. We need to rule out that there's anything else going on, and then we would know that it was the emissions from the pole that was causing this. So my oldest daughter had the EEG done. My youngest did not.
I'm curious, how did the doctors react to your suspicion that the telecom equipment was causing the symptoms that you were having?
The physicians were somewhat clueless on 5G and RF and what it can do. So I was put in a position to where I was educating our physicians. But once we have multiple appointments, so I did go back to them. They had looked up on it, they had studied up on it, and they were open and they could see that, this putting all the pieces together, that this is what was going on. So no one acted like I was crazy or making things up. Thankfully, they believed me. We did run into an issue with my neurologist that I was referred to. He kind of dismissed me. He was in the room with me for not that long. He left. He probably went and read a pamphlet and came back and said there's no studies that prove that this could be harmful to you, and kind of sent me on my way. But I did follow through with the EEG just in case.
I'm so glad that you did that. And it's really remarkable to me that we as the patients have to educate our practitioners on so many of the toxic things that we're exposed to. It's great that it's happening. I just wish it would happen faster because they need to catch up to what's going on because it's moving so quickly. So
Yeah.
the thing that really frustrates me, of all the places to put this equipment, what was the explanation for why they chose 32 feet outside of your bedroom window? Did you ever receive an explanation from Crown Castle or from T-Mobile as to why?
Yes, they gave us all kinds of explanations. All they really did was lie in circles. At one point, they said, "Oh, it's for the school that's nearby. There's an elementary school, about a block away." And they have a lot of backyard area. They have a lot of side yard area. They have a lot of easement area. And we suggested, well, it should be closer to them because the signal will degrade by the time it gets to their property. So how could it be in support of that? And then the woman from Crown Castle, her name is Jessica Fernandez, a very big liar. She stated that this is for the parents that are waiting in the car line. They need to be entertained and they need to have communications as a priority for the school. And so we contacted the school right away. We said, would you have requested this? Is this something you prefer? And the school laughed and they just said, absolutely not. The last thing we want is for parents to be on their phones while pulling through the car line while kids are darting in between out of cars. So that was one thing. And then we also suggested that they place it near a church that's nearby. The church is somewhat derelict. They don't maintain their property very well. I'm sure it's donation related, but that's not really the issue. Is there's only people on this property for 3 hours a week on Sunday. The rest of the time, it's one person, a caretaker who visits and infrequently. And then they have a large easement, which is also directly in line and actually closer from the trunk location where they pulled the fiber from to power this cell site. So they brought it closer to my home because they chose to. There's no valid reason. It is absolutely non-essential. They're trying to target more homes with the wireless signal. They're trying to target more users, more more Wi-Fi products in the area. And it's kind of like they're trying to compete with cable, which is wired and safer. And it's just, like I said, it's non-essential. So the lies and lies and lies kept coming out. And each time we would get a lie from them, we would research it and then we would present it back to them as, a lie and inaccurate. And they basically just kept going from one lie to another. And we've seen the story has changed about more than a dozen times.
I'm so sorry that you all are going through this. As a result of this equipment being installed, you're no longer in the home that you own. You are now in an apartment, correct?
Correct.
That's partially true. Amanda has moved out of the house with the 2 children for safety concerns. I remain in the home Monday through Thursday on average because I'm trying to run a small business from the home. It was really too much money for us to go rent a 3-bedroom home. This is just a 2-bedroom house, which works perfect for our family. We have an outdoor space that we love and we can't use right now. Amanda took the initiative and she made a big decision to make sure that there's going to be no harm to our children. So, we're kind of fractured. We spend a lot of time together on the weekends and stuff as much as we can, but it's caused problems for us that are not marital problems. It's caused major, major problems for us as a family. And Amanda can tell you more about why she made that decision.
Yeah. Can you talk more about the impact? I mean, being separated from your husband, having to live in some place that is not the home that you built and worked hard to pay for. What has it been like for you and for your children having to adjust to this new normal?
It was pretty traumatic at the beginning. We've settled, as good as we can. What led to that is that I became so ill that I could hardly function anymore. We did everything that we could to mitigate this. I spent thousands of dollars on Faraday curtains. We got blankets and we got hats, and I hung the curtains in our bedroom, which is both of our bedrooms are on the side of the house where the pole is. And we have a meter, and we did a meter reading after I hung the curtains, and there was no change. So I called Faraday, and I suggested that the equipment or the curtains that they sold me were defective, and they advised me to do a test. They said, take them back off of the curtain rods and put them over me, directly over me, and take the meter in with me and do a reading. And I did just that, and the meter went to 0. So I knew that the curtains were blocking it, but they had to be literally covering my body for it to work. So since I spent all this money on these curtains, I decided to pitch a camping tent in the living room and surround it with the curtains. So we put it on all sides. We took our blankets inside the RF blocking blankets inside the tent with our hats, and we limited our time at the home. I would pick my children up from school around 4 o'clock, and we would stay out until 9, 10 p.m. We would go to a public library or a park until we were exhausted and we had to go home. The girls started showering together to make it quicker. They would get out of the shower, put their hats on, jump in the tent. We would sleep there for the night and get up and do it again the next day. Unfortunately, we continued we were just ill. It wasn't getting better. So December 6th, we packed up the car and we moved out. And now we are on the other side of the county from my husband. It's about a 30-minute drive. It's further away, but I found a place that was, safe for us. Of course, we took the meter and we did a reading there because we didn't want to leave one bad situation, enter into another. And it read 0, as it should be. So that's where we are now, and it's pretty difficult. It's almost like we are divorced and we're sharing our time with our children, that we only get to see each other on the weekends. It's scary at night, me being alone with my children without my husband there. It's broken up our routines because of the financial burden of having to pay rent when I have a mortgage-free home just sitting there that I can't enter into. We've had to cancel a lot of things, all of their extracurriculars. My daughter had to stop playing piano. Our piano is in her house, and she can't access that now. It's just one thing after another that it has completely broken up our routine. It's devastating, but I try to stay positive around my children. I don't want this to, cause damage to them. My oldest daughter was diagnosed with PTSD by her neurologist from this. So we're dealing with that too. And that is, part of why she's had more of the diagnostic testing. She had some issues going on, and we're just dealing with it day by day. And we're kind of stuck in a situation that we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
I'm infuriated sitting back here listening to this. Like, it's despicable that these telecom companies just haphazardly put these towers and literally uproot and ruin people's lives and their safe spaces. Your home is supposed to be your sanctuary. It's supposed to be the place that you can go to for refuge, for comfort, for safety. And the fact that you needed to pitch a tent to be able to stay in your house and feel okay is not acceptable. How long have you been in that apartment now? How long is this going on?
We moved in December 6th.
Okay. And you stayed in the house for how long after the tower went up with those symptoms?
So the pole went into the ground July 17th, 2025, and we found out that it was activated on it was September 29th of 2025, and we immediately began to feel ill. October, just looking back on those, few months there, I remember how sick I was, and how hard it was to function. Around Thanksgiving, I went up to my mother's home in North Central Florida, just to get away from our house, which is not usual for us. We usually host Thanksgiving at our home with our family here in South Florida. We weren't able to do that this year. I went up to my mom and I made the decision to find an apartment, move out. I had to take out a loan for my first, last, and security to be able to do this. It's, right before Christmas, not something a mom with 2 young children wants to do with her money. But it had to be done. So we moved out December 6th, and we've been in the same apartment since.
It was about 50 days that they were enduring the tent, and trying to, I would just sleep on the other side of the tent. Since she's been out of the house, I put the Faraday curtains back on the windows. I basically have abandoned more than half of the house. The bathroom is on that side of the house. It's a small home, but so I use the bathroom regularly. But I live basically in between the kitchen and the couch when I'm here running the business Monday through Thursday, and then I try to schedule myself so that my Friday ends with me going right to Amanda's apartment. We spend all the weekends together. We've lost our birthdays. We can no longer invite people to our home for our birthdays because we're renting a 1-bedroom apartment. We've lost all of our holidays with our family and friends. We can no longer celebrate as we would for my business opening, or have a party, or just invite people over to have a beer or whatever, that normal people do, and listen to music outside. We can't garden. We can't use the outdoor space where all of our children's play equipment was located while they were citing this. They should have seen that there was a volleyball net. They should have seen that there was outdoor toys and things like that would have affected a family of 4. And we brought this all to the mayor, who's, you'll see his name there above the writing for my daughter. The mayor, the commissioners, there's other people in the Florida government that we brought this attention to, and they all just point at each other and in circles, and they never actually give you a straight answer. And when they have given us the answers that we requested, they make us wait weeks and weeks and weeks, and then they give us a bland or a very nondescript, a sidebar answer that's not necessarily correct. We've had to call them out on 100 different things that were lies, but it just goes on, and we're not getting the relief we need. We can't just abandon our home, and we can't sell it at a 30 to 40% loss. Anybody who's going to buy this house or look at the house is going to see this thing when they approach the house. It's not hidden. It's not, it's not attractive, and it's completely stands out among everything else in the neighborhood. Nothing about it looks natural.
I was going to ask you about property value. So have you had a real estate agent come in to tell you it's definitely 30 to 40% decrease on that property as a result of this?
No, but I did have one consultation with a realtor who said she would not want to market the property because she cares for our family. She knows us personally. She didn't want to be in a lengthy, sale process, and to see us lose our hard-earned equity in the home. That she preferred not to represent us as a realtor. And we don't actually want to sell the property. We bought it, for the purpose of raising our family here, and eventually maybe we would move. But this is a mortgage-free home. I paid it off after 19 years of paying the 30-year mortgage. So I used every penny that I had in my savings account to just cancel the mortgage. I pay for homeowners insurance, which is a huge expense in South Florida, but this is not something we want to replace with something that costs 3 times as much. We want to be able to get what we paid and what we improved. And what we've seen is everything outside of our fence has been devalued by city projects, by this telecom thing, and basically the irresponsible and incompetent actions of city staff and the permitting department to allow this crap.
I couldn't agree with you more. What advice would you give to somebody that's dealing with a similar situation to help to get them through?
We reached out to similar sufferers. I think you've met with Lisette Monzon. We also speak with some people in the Florida Coalition for Safe Technology, Lauren Monez, who's been very supportive. These types of support and the Children's Health Defense are key to just getting by in the day-to-day. But we need to groundswell and to overcome this as a nation. If this telecom industry can have the legal protections that allow them to do anything and everything that they want to do, and also disband us from allowing us to have any recourse, that is not American. And we will lose this country to a business, not to a dictator. That's just insane.
So well said. I'm so thankful for you both being here this morning to share the story of what you're going through. And we definitely want to hear from you as updates happen. This is obviously still something that's very much in progress. So keep in touch with me, keep in touch with CHD. Let us know if there's any updates on what's going on. We would love to have you back. In the meanwhile, how can people connect with you?
We're here in South Florida in Broward County in Hollywood. I can share my email address. I'm not sure if that's necessary, but you can find us locally. We would prefer if someone wants to get in touch with me that they reach out maybe to you, and then we have a private message to share some of this information. And again, we found Lisette because she was vocal and active, and when I was trying to figure this out, she had actually made the news. So unfortunately, we ended up on the news as well. I just think that none of this was necessary, and that the telecom people have options, and we just don't.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I'm sending prayers to you and your family. I hope that this resolves itself and that you are all in good health and you can continue to fight this battle, not only for yourselves, but for everybody else that either has this happening or could eventually have it happening. Unfortunately, this proliferation is happening super quickly and so many people are being negatively impacted. So your story is so important. I'm so grateful for you being here this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Anytime you need us back, let us know.
We will definitely be in touch. Thanks again. So you heard it here. There is something really awful going on. And if you don't know, you can't stop it. So definitely make sure that you're in contact with your elected officials. You proactively let them know how you feel about this. And before we go, I want to remind everyone to be sure to check out the newest release from CHD's publishing imprint, Unplug. A radiologist explores the damage caused by electropollution and how you can prevent it by Rob Brown. This draws on years of research and medical expertise. Dr. Brown explores the electromagnetic environment that surrounds us and offers practical steps for reducing exposure in an increasingly wireless world. And don't just stop at reading, get involved. Join our 704 No More community scavenger cell tower hunts. Take a walk through your neighborhood, spot cell towers and small cell installations, snap a photo, and share what you find with CHD in your community by tagging at 704 No More on social media. Awareness is where action begins. When residents know what's being installed near their places where we live, learn, worship, work, and play, they're better equipped to ask questions, speak up, and engage in local decisions. Every photo and post helps build awareness and strengthens your community voice. Change starts close to home, so learn what's in your neighborhood, share what you discover, and help bring greater transparency and accountability to your community. Everything you do matters and it moves the needle. So get out there, take some photos and share them with us. Thank you so much for being part of the show this morning, for tuning in, and we'll be back with you soon. Have a wonderful day.
Can you tell us your name, please?
Brian Burrows.
And you are the director of Vax2.
Yes, and partnered with you and AMC and Toby.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about your son. You have one child.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me about him. How many vaccines has he had?
Zero.
Why didn't you vaccinate him?
My wife is a label reader. She believes that kind of what you put in your body is how your body will work. When you go to the grocery store with her, she just sits there and goes through the aisles and just reading the ingredients of everything. So when we were going to have a kid, my whole argument against the schedule was there's way more than I had. And so I said to Kara, it was can you believe they give this many shots? And I think at the time it was 56 shots. So when she started looking into it, she started looking into the ingredients. And I remember the day I was driving her to the hospital, she just said, he's not getting any, to give birth. He's not getting any. And I freaked out. I was like, oh my God, what do you mean none? And she said, none. He's not getting any vaccines. And so I was really, really nervous. I started having a little internal panic attack because, you're told if you don't do this, kid's gonna die. So yeah, that's why he ended up getting none. And I remember the first time he got a fever, he was 2 months old, and I stood over his crib at night. I just I was gonna stand there to make sure that he was breathing all night. So really kind of silly when you look back at it, but
So
yeah.
He's 15 years old now.
15, yeah.
And how is his health?
Incredible. He when he gets sick, he just actually was sick about a month ago, and he thought he was going to die. He was really worried about it because he has nothing to kind of reference, really being sick. So it's interesting to see because all of his friends are sick all the time. He got sick a month ago, and it took about a week, and then he was perfectly fine.
Right, so does he have any autism?
No.
ADD?
No.
ADHD?
No.
Paralyzed anywhere?
Nope.
Eczema?
Nope.
Allergies?
Nothing. Except he's a little bit of a wise guy. So my
How
wife
is he
and
doing
I.
at school? Is he clever? Is he
Straight A's. Yeah.
Straight
A's. Yeah. He does really well. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, it's the best thing we've ever done for him. Is not vaccinate him.
Thank you. And everybody stand by because we do feel there's another movie coming.
Yeah.
Toby,
There may be.
Brian. Yeah. Oh yes. Thank you, Brian.
All right. Bye, Polly.
Right now.
46% of the American people say mandates are dangerous, they're damaging, and vaccine science isn't settled.
A steady decline of childhood vaccine rates. Vaccination rates continued to decline last year.
There's a discourse about vaccines that didn't exist before.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense is the leader in the health freedom movement.
The Department of Health and Human Services is overhauling the immunization schedule, now only recommending 11.
We are making recommendations that are science-based, that are common sense.
Secretary Hegseth, discarding the mandatory flu vaccine requirement.
Your body, your faith, and your convictions are not negotiable.
People recognize you have to be able to make an individualized decision.
For the first time, the U.S. FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines killed American children.
States are putting in place medical freedom laws. There's bills in Congress that Children's Health Defense is supporting, the GRACE Act for the right to religious exemptions, the End the Vaccine Carve-Out, ending liability protection, and Tom Massey's bill to repeal the PrEP Act.
One of the most aggressive medical accountability lawsuits in decades.
Suing the American Academy of Pediatrics.
CHD is suing under RICO laws, claiming that the AAP operates as a criminal enterprise and has for decades.
A federal judge yesterday blocked Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s recent overhaul of the nation's childhood vaccine schedule.
They basically just froze all vaccine policy.
The American Academy of Pediatrics and other medical groups filed a lawsuit arguing the vaccine changes violated federal law.
Which is outrageous for a single judge sitting in Boston to stop any work at the Centers for Disease Control related to vaccines.
This conflict between medical freedom and medical coercion, it's a fundamental conflict that we must resolve now in favor of medical freedom or forever be truly slaves to medical tyranny.
I am so glad that there are people like you who are still fighting this.
Children's Health Defense, if you don't know what they do, folks, look it up.
We have got to, as a society, global, decide, is medical coercion okay, or do you have a right to decide what happens to your body?
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.